Love
But
it.
we're constantly in this, to do task oriented mode, which is not necessarily our best and natural mode as women. And so it really is something that you have to think of daily, sometimes constantly throughout my day. I have to remember, oh, wait, okay, fun and rich. This is what I'm going for. Or can I get to that moment where I can drop the attitude that I know is starting to build up inside of me and is going to end up coming out on my kids or my husband if I don't let this go? And that's not going to be a fun, rich experience.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma.
Hi, Mitch. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Saríce. So good to be here with you today.
Yes, I get to meet the fun, rich mama.
Yeah,
And I wanted to ask you about that name too, but we'll get into it later. So
of course.
first, can we start? Like, can you tell us about your background and how did you get started doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So I used to, let's condense the story because, way
Yeah.
back when I was a kid. No, what had happened was when I got married with my husband, we had started trying for kids and were unsuccessful for quite some time. And I got married a little later in life. So I was already in my mid 30s by the time we started this process. And at the time, I was traveling around the world and helping to run these large scale events and also doing personal development coaching. And so, I'd be gone anywhere from 8 to 16 times in a year
Mm.
for a week at a time, up to 2 weeks at a time. And so it finally just got to the point where, the clock was ticking. I wasn't getting any younger and nothing was working. We tried all of the fertility tests and found out that we both just had unexplained infertility. That's always
Mm.
such a wonderful answer because you're like,
Right?
great, what do we do with that? Thanks. And we just got to the point where we realized if we wanted to have kids, it had to be through IVF, if we wanted to have our own kids that way. And so I'll tell you, it was a bit of a struggle because for a while, it's an expensive process. And for anyone who's ever been through the journey of trying to have kids and it's just not working and you're faced with that, for me personally, there was this part of me of like, I should be able to do this. I am a
Mm.
woman. This is part of my natural function. Why is it not working? And so you tell yourself all these stories and you doubt your self-worth and it's like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be you just come up with all sorts of stories
Right.
and justifications. That's just too much money. I mean, that's so selfish of me to want to spend that much money so we can have kids and blah, 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 blah. And finally, it just kind of got to this point where one day I looked at it and I realized, I was like, to do in vitro, actually, it's about the cost of like a starter car here. Maybe like, I think we ended up spending 20,000 in the end for two kids. So I got my kids, they got paid for it. But basically when I looked at it that way, I realized how many cars am I going to go through in my life that I've spent money on? I don't even keep past maybe 5 years and I've got another car and I don't even think twice about it, right? Because you need a
Right.
car. You got to, where we live, you have to have a car in order to get around. And when I put it in perspective that way, and I thought, this is a family. These are children. This
A
is my
minute
life.
investment
Yes,
compared.
all of this
Yeah.
stuff that I'm thinking of, I'm like, what the heck is wrong with me? We'll make it work. And so my husband and I, we said, okay, we're doing this. And so we ended up going through in vitro. Our first round was unsuccessful. The second round was when I had my first daughter, Zaya, and I
Oh, I
turned
love that name.
41. Oh, thank you very much. I turned 41 11 days after she was born, and I knew I wanted to. So I asked the doctor, I said, okay, how long do I have to wait? Because if we wait too long, it's not going to happen. He said, give your body at least 6 months. And I'm like, all right. So 6 months to the day, I'm like, what's up?
Wow.
I'm here. And we went and we had our second daughter, Eja. And then I was 42 at that point in time. So, kind of an older mom and traveling the world. And all of a sudden, I was just used to being large and in charge at these events that I would run. I even would take the girls with me because my mom would travel with me sometimes. And so it was really cool. Zaya had, I think, 7 passport stamps by the time she was 6 months old because I had to go to work and she wouldn't take a bottle. So she had to travel with me. And so it was this really cool experience. And I remember I would have people come up to me and they would say, "Oh, it's so cool to see you being a mom and running these events and coaching people and just showing us the possibility of what you can do as a mom and that having kids doesn't have to stop you, you know?" And so it was just this really neat experience. Well, fast forward a few years later and COVID hits and
Mm.
the company that I was working with shut down. And at the same time, we had just sold our house and we were building a new house. But in the meanwhile, we were living in this tiny little rental that in a town that we didn't know anyone. And it was just this dark, everything was brown, huge trees outside, which were gorgeous, and awnings, but it just made everything super dark. And so it's just brown, 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 super small, very outdated, which is fine. It just, when you're stuck in there though, and you have two little small children running around and your
Mm.
furniture's all over the place, and there's going to be toys all over the place. And you go from, like I said, being large and in charge and running things and traveling around. And now you're home. And the most interesting conversation I had to have with my husband, who got to go outside for work, was like, "Hey, guess what? I changed 5 poopy diapers today."
Wow.
And, you just suddenly I experienced this total loss of identity.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there had been little bits and pieces of that along the way. I think, obviously anyone who's a mom knows that experience of what just happened when you have a baby in those first few months. Your life is just so transformed beyond anything you could ever imagine, right? So I'd had little bits and pieces of like, I just need to sleep, or I just need my body to myself. This just intensified and magnified it. And there was one particular moment where my husband was at work and I was at home with the girls. And they're, I think, 1.5 and 2.5 at this point. And they're just running around being little 1.5 and 2.5 year olds, nothing bad, just playing. And I was just having a pity party for myself, right? Because, just sometimes you do.
Yeah.
And there was something that was just driving me nuts, and they just kept screaming, and I just wanted it to stop. And so I finally just broke down, and I call this my momster moment. And I just yelled and screamed at them. And in my mind, I was thinking, just sound loud and scary so they think you're a monster and they just shut up. And and so I did, and I always say, fortunately enough, I think they were just too young to know what was going on. They just kind of looked at me like, what happened to mommy? And then of course I have my moment like, oh my gosh, I'm this horrible mother. What am I doing? And I'm like snotting and crying and wiping it up and hugging them. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm awful. And so it was just that breakdown moment where, I just realized, man, I can't be the only one that's going through this and that has this experience. And it's just, motherhood is this glorious, amazing, never felt more emotions in your life on a
Right.
high and on a low. And it's
Oh,
just, yeah,
right.
right? You're just like, oh, I suck. Great.
It's
Oh my
so
gosh, what have I done?
complex. It's so complex that like sometimes like you can hear mothers talk and another mom will understand, but to someone without children, they'll think, oh, she doesn't love her children or she doesn't like being a mom. And then you're like, no, like you love them more than anything, but at the same time, they can drive you crazy as
Oh
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're like these precious angels. They're like
Yeah.
nails on a chalkboard sometimes. It's like,
Right.
I want to love you, but get out of here. And, so, oh, sorry. So I just, in that moment, I just realized, okay, something's got to change. Especially, I was kicking myself even more because here I was, for the last 7 years, I'd been traveling the world helping people be in control of their lives, be the one who chooses how you react to a situation, right? Doesn't matter what's going on, you're the one that gets to choose how you react. And I just had this total meltdown and breakdown. And I'm like, man, I know all the tips and tricks and tools, and I'm not using them. What's going on? And so it doesn't matter what
Like,
sometimes you
oh,
just get in a funk.
absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes life just hits you. And that's okay though, because if we don't have those moments of contrast, it doesn't give us the chance to build ourselves and grow ourselves back up and know we can get up again and we can model this for our children and we can, dust ourselves off and really get to work, which is what I did. In that moment, I made the decision. This is not the mother I want to be. This is not the mother I will be. I am going to be a mother that's going to show my children that even when life feels tough and hard and challenging, and like you want to just hit your hands against the floor and cry because nothing's going your way, it doesn't mean you have to stay there.
Right.
And so it wasn't like an overnight, I'm a perfect mom now. Obviously, it takes work and you have those moments, but every day it was just a little bit better, a little bit better. You know, what can I do today to be a little bit better? All right, let me pull this out. I know I can use this. Let me work on that. And that finally led me to where I created my podcast and coaching for Fun Rich Mom, because one of my top values is fun and joy and playfulness. Like, if you're not having fun in life, dude, how boring, right?
Right.
So I want this to be a fun experience. And rich, yeah, everyone automatically goes to money, which is cool. Yeah, I would love to have a lot of money, but really what I'm craving is richness in
Yeah.
experience. I want the depth of everything that we're doing to just permeate my soul, where it's like, I am living. This is life. And I am taking it in and I am using every bit of it. And of course, that doesn't mean like every single day, like I'm making sandwiches for lunch. Oh, this is such a rich experience. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but it's to find those moments, and it's like I feel
Yes.
like I get like finding moments of gratitude and appreciating the little things and just building experiences with your new family and creating
Yeah.
a rich life. Yeah, not necessarily
Yeah,
wealth,
exactly.
but rich.
Yeah, exactly. It's just rich. But here's the thing, is it's so easy to get stuck in the mundane today to do things, especially as a mom, because we get stuck in this task mode so often. Oh, I got to do this. I got to get the baby up. I got to change the diaper. I got to feed the baby. I got to make the lunch. I got to pack the lunches. I got to take him to school. I have to clean the house. I have to go to work. And so we're constantly in this, sorry, I talk with my hands a lot, everybody,
No, it's all
but
good.
we're constantly in this, to do task oriented mode, which is not necessarily our best and natural mode as women. And so it really is something that you have to think of daily, sometimes constantly throughout my day. I have to remember, oh, wait, okay, fun and rich. This is what I'm going for. Is this moment something that I can create something fun and rich out of it? Or can I get to that moment where I can drop the attitude that I know is starting to build up inside of me and is going to end up coming out on my kids or my husband if I don't let this go? And that's not going to be a fun, rich experience. So it's really just creating that mindset and reminding yourself almost on a constant loop. Because if you don't, your brain will come up with other stories for you. And
Yeah.
usually they're not good ones,
Yeah, and it
right?
sounds like am I making this like fun and rich? This is also like a mindfulness practice because you're even
Yes.
giving it it's mindfulness because you're like trying to be in the moment, and then you're being intentional about what can I do to make this, a fun and rich experience. I like that. It's a nice
Yeah,
tool to use.
it is. And it makes such a difference. For example, I homeschool my girls. And homeschooling is another way to find out your character as a mom, because it will challenge you as well.
Yeah.
Your kids will push every single one of your buttons. You're going to push every single one of their buttons, and there are moments where you're just like, oh my goodness. And I have a bunch of friends who homeschool. We all laugh about this. And like, one of my friends is like, I have to tell my son he needs to go outside for a walk for a minute and come back for his safety. And I agree. I'm like, there are times where I'm just like, go take a break right now. Just go take a break. Why? We're not done. Go take a break. You will appreciate it if you go take a break, because I need a minute. And I sometimes laugh at myself, and I have to remind myself, okay, who's the kid here? Because I'm about to have a
Right.
big old tantrum like a kid who can't control and regulate my own emotions, because I'm just getting frustrated. And so it's really being able to identify when that is starting to build up in you, because it does in all of us, and it will at any given time, right? No matter what tools and tricks you
Right.
have, we're just humans. Things start to build on us. And especially if you haven't taken the time to really give yourself that gas in the tank that we all need, and you're kind of running on those fumes, then that frustration builds a lot faster and easier. So, that's what leads to those monster moments. And like I said, right away it didn't change for me. It was like literally having to be aware of, oh, what are my signals that my body and my mind is sending me that I'm about to get to that point. And if I
Yeah.
can recognize it, because a lot of us, we don't recognize it when it's happening because we're just so used to being in the moment, oh, bam, here we go. And if you can start to see, wait, my body's starting to signal me, you can stop it right there, because
Yeah.
then you can be like, okay, I don't need to get to that point. Let me take a breath. Let me send my kid on a break. Let me go sit in my room for a minute, whatever it is that you need. But let me just get to the point where I can calm myself down, because this is also teaching your kids how to self-regulate, right? How
Right.
to,
Yeah.
it's okay to have emotions. And at the same time, we can also work with our emotions instead of letting them explode all over the place.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny. Like I spoke with a mom yesterday for the podcast, and I went through the same experience. But it's funny, like even though like maybe you're a coach and I'm a nutritionist and whatever profession you are, just because you're that, when it comes to you, sometimes you can like forget, because I was always like preaching to like my clients, and especially ones that were moms. I'm like, wow, like why don't they take care of themselves? It's important. Like they're the mothers. And then when it came to me, like the first year, I was
yeah,
just like, I was barely like, I was kind
right.
of neglecting myself and just making sure everybody else was okay. And then I had that same like moment of like meltdown, and I'm like, wait, like I'm matter. I need to take care of myself. And just like you said, it's a great model for our children, because they'll see that it's important to take care of yourself. Like they should see like, yeah, no matter what, like I should be good too, because like they say, it sounds cliche, but you can't pour from an empty cup. And then when I started
Mhm.
prioritizing my health and exercising and eating better, then I was a better mom. So
Yes.
I could totally relate to that.
So true. Well, it's always
And not
easier to
overnight,
see.
just like
Yeah.
setting like little micro goals, like I'm going to drink more water today and I'm going to move today.
Yeah. And it's just little stuff like that. But like I was saying, it's so much easier when you're looking from the outside in to see
Yeah.
someone else and be like,
So
oh
it's
my
funny.
gosh,
Every time I hear
if
this, I'm
only
like,
she
yeah.
would do this and she doesn't. Oh my
Right.
gosh, it's just such a simple fix. And then
Yes.
we're walking around with our blinders on, and other people are looking at us going, it's easy to
Right, it's
preach.
so funny. Yeah, it like totally. What a awakening! Like, and then it's
Yeah.
funny because I have like friends without children. They'll tell me like make similar comments, and I don't even like get offended, because that was me before I had kids too. I'm like, okay.
Oh yeah. I joked around. I had a friend, my friend down the street, we got on and did an interview, and we were talking about how we were the best, most amazing mothers before we ever had kids.
Right. Oh my gosh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we were so good. It was so easy. I mean, we were perfect mothers.
And I don't think we didn't touch on it, but can you tell the audience like what do you do and who do you serve?
Yeah. So, like I said, I have the podcast, Fun Rich Mom,
Yes, check
and
it
I
out.
love to do, yeah, yeah. I love to do solo episodes, and I love to do interviews. Obviously, I'm going to have you as a guest on
Yeah.
because I think you're amazing and will give a ton of value. Basically, the overall goal, though, is um, for lack of a better phrase, I guess the tagline I have is "Mom may be the name you hear the most. It's not the only name that matters." Because I know how easy it is to get lost in that mom life. And suddenly you look up and you're like, what happened to me? Who am I? Where did I go? And I feel like all I am is this person that services everyone. Like, this is my only purpose, is to take care of everyone. If you go outside to work so that I can bring home money. And then and then when I get home, I still have to keep working because I got to fix everything and I got to take care. And then I got this husband I got to take care of. And we start to get resentful, and we
Yeah.
lose ourselves, and we feel overwhelmed, and like we're just like, this is all that life has to offer, and that's so far from the truth. If you can start to break out of that, and I like to say that we're like a diamond. Okay, so a diamond only shines its brightest because it has lots of little cuts. It's not just a big flat surface. It has tons and tons of all of these different
Right.
reflective surfaces. And when the light shines and catches all of those different surfaces, that's when it's just brilliant. And so I like to dust us off, and shine the light on all the different parts of us that are still there, but we put to the side when we became mom. And
Yeah.
so that's what I really focus on in the podcast. And then also, we'll be launching a group coaching and online training for moms to just basically reinvent themselves, rediscover themselves, redefine who they want to live life as mom and beyond, because both sides are just so important, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned that you had children later in age. Well,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
relatively compared to societal norms. And I want to speak to that because I feel like that's like it is a trend where women are having, like, I'm considered, like, I had my first child at 33, and to compare it to some of my like peers, especially here,
Yeah.
that's considered like older. And
Yes.
we're still expanding our family. So could you talk about some of the, because I see a lot of benefits in like, compared to like not having a child when I was like 22 than now. I feel like, I don't know, not just like a little bit more financially stable, but also more patient. I kind of like, got all I traveled, you went out and everything. Like I got that out my system before, even though
Yeah.
it's not like we travel now with our son. So can you talk about some of the benefits for you as having a child older?
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't this one wasn't an intentional choice to wait that long.
Right.
Obviously, getting
Yeah.
married later and then having problems having babies, that's just kind of where we ended up. And I know that today that's a story for a lot of people, or there's, so many people want to build their careers first and then they have kids, and so they tend to have kids earlier or later, or we have a whoopsie baby or whatever it is. And so I would have preferred to have kids a few years earlier, probably in my early 30s, I think would have been really cool just because it gives you a little bit more time in the long run. Let's be real, right?
Mm.
I only have so much time in this life. Granted, it can be taken at any moment, but at the same time, odds are I will live to this. And at the same time, just to speak to all of those things that you said, yeah, we're definitely in a place. Oh my gosh. Between my 20s, where I was living in LA, I was trying to be a big, movie star at the time. And my life was definitely about me. And my resources were definitely about, I can afford this much, right? Versus now where we're more established, we have had that time to really build up to where we are. We have a stable home, at stable, all of the stuff is good. So that just makes it so much easier where, okay, I don't need to worry about, am I going to be able to keep the lights on or do I need to feed my kids? And not saying that everyone in their 20s is like that. That's just
Right.
where I was
Yeah.
at. Right. And so that flexibility and freedom is so much nicer. Also, the fact that, traveling has become a part of our lifestyle. So at this point in time, we can also do that with our kids and we have the financial means to do that. And I also have, I guess, not to say that you don't have wisdom at a young age, because I've met some women that are incredibly wise at a young age, and I'm just blown away. Me
Right.
personally, I was not a wise person in my 20s. I did not carry that wisdom. I had to have a lot of hard knocks in my life to build up that experience, to build up that wisdom, and to really see where I want to parent from. And I think this would be true of anyone. You're going to be a completely different parent in your 20s versus in your 40s. Just because that life experience changes who you are. I am a different person than I was in my 20s. Are there some core values that are still the same? For sure. I love the playfulness. I like to have fun. All of those things. Family is important to me. But really when it comes down to it, I just have an understanding and I think a patience that I wouldn't have had I had my children younger, because again, I have the resources. I've gone through some hard knocks. And when my kids do things, I can step back and say, oh, okay, you know what? This is what's going on. I've spent more time studying about personal development and behavior and who they are versus in my 20s. So I have a better come from for them
Right.
when I stay intentional, right? And that's another thing. I was not intentional in my 20s. That word didn't even exist in my mind. So
Right.
I would have been kind
Same.
of parenting by the seat of my pants and just doing the best that I could. And I'm sure I would have learned and they would be fine at the same time. At, but I know that I bring a wealth of experience and just more resources to them in general. And then the other thing I think is every moment is super precious, because at the same time, it's like I waited years and years and years for these kids, and then I had to pay for them on top of that. And so, like every moment, even when I get frustrated, it's just, I just want to grab them and hug them and love them. And again, you're going to do that in your 20s or your 30s, doesn't matter what age, because you're mom and you love and adore your children. I just feel like me compared to my 20s and what I had to go through to get to this point where I could be a mom, it just makes everything so much more precious. And time, I realize, flies. Where in my
Hmm.
20s, it was just like infinite, right? You
Right.
kind of have that indestructible mindset, nothing's ever going to happen. Versus now, I'm like, we're getting older and I have to really take care of my body because I want to make sure that I can play with my girls when they want to play and that we can just go run and do things and that they're not missing out because they have an older parent who can't get up when I sit
Yeah.
down with
Oh.
them or, you know, and so it makes me appreciate that. And it makes me really want to just every moment is precious because I don't know that I'm going to get to see them get married. I don't know if I'm going to get to see, because if they wait like me and don't have kids till their 40s, I'm going to be in my 80s. I'll probably, but I'm not going to have the energy and the strength. So I got to take advantage of every moment that I have with them now.
No, yeah.
And so that's something I don't think I would have had so much of an appreciation for had I been a younger mom.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, of course, they're, pros and cons, and like
Yeah.
you said, that I'm sure, like, not I'm sure, I know women who had children in their 20s, and their kids are amazing, and they were amazing parents. Like, I remember my sister had kids in her 20s, and I told her, like, she's like one of the Montessori moms before she knew what Montessori was. Like, she
Oh,
was
that's so
doing a
cool.
lot of things to like cultivate their independence, like leaving like snacks and food on their like eye level and giving them little kitchen. I was like, now that's popular. So, and she was in her 20s, but she always knew she wanted to be a mom, and I wasn't so sure like when I
Yeah.
was. And then we got married. We were like married for like 5, 6 years until we had our first child. So yeah, like it just depends on you and your personality. I'm like you. I feel like I'm much wiser now and much
Mm-hmm.
more patient. And because I waited so long and he came, I was just like, I just adore him. Even though, of course, we talked about how
Yeah.
we can sometimes be like overwhelmed and everything. But I appreciate like every moment with him so much.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's just like your sister. There's some women that just, they're just amazing. They just have that natural instinct. And that was not my
Yeah.
natural instinct.
Exactly. Yeah, mine either. I was like in my early 20s. I like after I was in like traveling, backpacking, and all over the place. Then I went to college later, like by like American terms. We usually go later here, but yeah. So I kind of did everything on a delayed timeline.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it
And it
all.
happens and it's fine. And what's cool is no matter when you have your kid, whether you're younger, whether you're in the middle, or whether you're a little bit older, I mean, the best thing is just, your heart is going to explode with love. And it's just really recognizing, okay, there are going to be some moments that this precious little amazing creation that I got to bring to the world is going to drive me insane. And that's okay. That's their job.
Right.
And I'm going to drive them insane. And that's okay. That's part of my job. This is just how it goes. However, what I can do right now is I can start to recognize what are those signals that I have so that I can always make sure I never take it to that extreme because it's the worst feeling. And we all do it. Every single parent has had a moment where they just took it to the extreme and they're just like, oh,
Yeah.
what have I done? You know, because that's part of the experience and you can make sure that that's not an everyday thing. I've run across moms before where they're like, I just can't control it anymore. I just don't even know. I don't even realize I'm in the middle of yelling and being so reactive. It's just such a natural thing right now and I don't know what to do about it. And there are things that you can do about it. And like I said, once you realize that and you can get to that point, it just makes it so much easier, more peaceful and joyful. And that's really the place where I want to help moms get to, where they feel like I'm still me. I don't feel overwhelmed. I don't feel overstimulated. Like if my husband wants to touch me, I'm not like, get away from me. I've already been touched too much. I still want to have this relationship because I married him for a reason and I want to keep that going. And I also have this part of me that just thrives outside of motherhood, outside of marriage, and that has these friendships. And it's okay to go and nurture that and be that person too. And it's going to make me better when I come home and bring that back to my kids and to my husband. So that's what really gets me excited is really developing that full person so that mama doesn't feel like she's lost and has nowhere to go.
Do you have like 3 tips that you would give moms that want to work with you to like start that process if they feel like overwhelmed, they don't know where to start? Like, what is something that you would tell them to start off with?
So the first thing I always tell people, and it sounds so stupid simple, they're like, that can't work. And it is. It's like the foundation of everything is be aware of your body. I call it base, your body, your attention, your speech, and your energy. But your body is the first place that you want to be looking at, because it's going to give you signals as to what you're doing. You know, like you see someone walking around like this, you know, they're tired, maybe they're depressed. It's like, ugh. Versus you see someone walking with confidence, right? Just
Yeah.
those are quick and easy visuals to think of. You can see the difference in a person by how they carry themselves. So paying attention to your body is going to be a huge thing. And movement is so critical too, because our brains need oxygen in order to be thinking and to be creative and to get ourselves out of that worry, because we have that little amygdala in there that it's a worry center, right? It's like this little size of an almond, and all it does is look out for, what do I need to be worried about? What do I need to be looking for? Danger, 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 you know, and it's really, really good at its job. It's the one that's helping us create all of those stories. Like maybe they thought, oh, are they talking about me? Maybe my kids, maybe I'm a bad mom. Maybe, you know, and, and it serves its purpose. And at the same time, if we give into it, it will run wild. So bringing that oxygen back to your brain so you can think, clear out your mind, and get back into your executive brain where it can have the logical decisions and get out of that emotional brain is going to be a huge difference. So make sure you are including some sort of movement in your day. Or if you've been sitting for a while, get up, walk around, do some, like I'll literally get up and do some jumping jacks, just whatever. So I'm getting a little bit of deep breath into me and my brain wakes up and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I'm out of my funk. Because if you look at depressed people, people who are walking around in that depressed state, what are they not doing? They're not breathing well. They're
not
not
breathing, not
moving.
moving.
Yeah, they tend to be sedentary. And all that does is just bring your world in, and it creates that zoom focus, right? Like a camera, zoom. Where we zoom in on the problem. And it's like we were talking about the blinders before. We get these blind spots, and all we do is we just look at this one thing and we get so focused and dialed in on it. Like if you take your hands, for those of you that are watching, you can see. So say you have all your problems right here on your left hand, but all the solutions are right here on your right hand. But you are so focused on that left hand, your right hand sitting here like, hey, here I am, here I am. You can't see it though, because all you can do is focus on this problem. And if you just open it up, didn't even look that way, it starts waving. You're like, oh, wait a second, solutions are right here. So your body is going to be the first place to start. Make sure that you're moving it. Make sure you're oxygenating it. Stand and like have a superhero stand. It sounds funny, but I'll do that sometimes. I'll just be like, all right, I'm Wonder Woman. You know, what would Wonder Woman do? And it just gives me a reframe to go from, you know, like, oh, I'm bad mom. Nope, I'm Wonder Woman, you know, or whatever it is that you want to do. Like the girls and I joke around, I'm either Wonder Woman or Black Widow. It depends on the day. But you can make up your own superhero, right? And then, of course, the next thing is, what are you focused on? Just like I was saying, your attention is going to drive everything. And so that's why I like to start off the day with, what is my intention for today? What do I want to attend my thoughts to? Because think of yourself like a servant, like a waiter, an attendant to your brain. And you're either going to be attending the thoughts that are going to come out and tell you how bad you are, what's going wrong, how nothing goes right for you, how your kids are just screaming. And the more you attend to them, the bigger they get and the more demanding they get. And you feel like you're stuck there. Versus I'm going to attend to the things that I want to create and the way I want the day to go. Does that mean the day's going to go exactly the way you want it and it's going to be perfect? No, life happens, stuff is going to happen. However, you can attend to, okay, even in this situation now, I know I can be attentive to, what am I learning here, which is going to make me a stronger parent, a better person, all of the different things, better friend, better wife. How can I make this, what resources do I have that can help me get out of this? Or maybe how can we get creative as a family and ask my kids, hey, let's come up with a solution here, because mama's just not being very creative right now. And you guys are super creative. And now, how cool is that? You're involving your kids when there's a problem. They start to learn, oh, we're problem solvers too. We can be part of the solution. Which a lot of the times in mom mode, we just get so used to, don't do that. Don't touch your sister. Don't do that. Put that up. No, now you go sit in your room. Instead, it's like, hey, you're a problem solver. What? Let's come up with a solution together. So body, attention, speech, what you're saying really matters. You speak life into your life. The words you use I don't know
Yeah.
if you ever hear like the metaphors you tend to say a lot, like, oh my gosh, life is so hard,
No, we
versus
don't
life is
speak
like a bowl
that.
of cherries, you know?
Yeah.
You're speaking that into your life. Hang
Right.
around someone who's got things going wrong, and you're going to hear a lot. You'll just listen to their speech patterns, listen to the words they use, listen to the things they say over and over again. And you could start to see, oh, this is why they're always no like Debbie Downer, versus someone who brings life to you. You know, there's always that person, you know, that anytime you hang out with them, you're like, ah, I just feel alive and better. And I just want to
Yes.
be around them.
And the
Listen to
opposite
how
is
they
true
talk.
too.
Yeah, listen to how they talk. Everything they say and do, it's uplifting, it's inspiring, even in the midst of problems, which they acknowledge. They don't ignore. It's not about ignoring problems. You acknowledge it. It's solution oriented, though. It's not,
Right.
So those three things right there. All of that is going to lead to the type of energy that you're bringing to the day as well. And so, you know, you can be energy neutral, you can be energy poor, or you can be energy rich. And most of us, we're kind of in energy neutral, sometimes a little energy poor. But when you start to say, no, I'm going to live in energy rich, that changes again how you start to go throughout your day. And like I said,
Yeah.
all this stuff seems so like, seriously, that's what you're giving me. And those things are
Yeah.
literally the first things I go to. Every time I am in a bad mood or funky or whatever, I'm like, well, I've been sitting too long and I've been listening to this little story instead of paying attention to the thoughts that I want. And I surely haven't been speaking well. So I changed those three things and it's literally my whole day becomes different. I become a different
Yeah,
person.
sometimes people are looking for like magic, but I always say like you want to have the basics covered first because sometimes people ask me, "Well, is there a supplement that can help me do this? Is there a gadget?" And I'm like, first before you go to supplements, there's no supplement or gadget that's gonna like help give you more progress if you're not sleeping, eating well, and moving your body. Like first get that down. I know it sounds annoying, but like it's true. Like
Yeah.
you can if you don't sleep and you're just eating junk and you're like not drinking water, but then you take Irish sea moss, which is popular now, it won't help. It won't help. So yeah, like sometimes it may sound like really simple to people, but it's real. Like
Yeah.
simple things like speaking positively to yourself, moving your body, your posture. I love that. There's also a lot of psychology behind that. Like I read this study where they said that like if you smile, even if you're not happy,
Yes.
but you smile, this will like send signal to your brain that you are happy. So I can see how like just changing your posture, even if you don't feel confident, just that posture will send your brain like, yeah, I am confident. So I
Yeah.
think those are great tips.
Yeah, and it's fun. And for me, if it's not simple and not doable, then what's the point of it? And all
Right.
of that is super simple
We want
stuff
to
that you
make it
can do anywhere,
complicated,
anytime.
and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you homeschool your girls, and can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what made you? Because that is something that me and my husband are talking about as well. And what made you make that decision to homeschool? And how do you manage that with you run a business and you, like you said, you want to make time for self care? And so, can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I never knew what homeschooling was. Like growing up, I grew up in the 80s. Like that wasn't a thing. You know, either that or it was like the fringe people did that. And I never heard about homeschooling actually until I moved to Texas. And suddenly I started meeting these people and their kids weren't in school when they should be. I'm like, what's up with that? And they said, oh, we homeschool our kids. And I'm like, what's that? What do you mean homeschool? You know? And so they started saying, well, we basically take their education and we do it at home. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. And I would just watch these kids and there was something about them that just was so intriguing. And then I got curious. So I would start sitting down with parents of homeschoolers and why are you homeschooling? And what's it like? You know, same thing as you. And just really interviewing them. And then also interviewing the kids like, hey, so do you like it? Do you feel like you're missing out? You know, and the majority of them always came back with, we love this. We love, you know, for parents, we get to really create and mold the curriculum for our children in a way that makes sense for our family, for our values. Obviously, we're teaching them the cores, the
Right.
basic
Yeah.
things. You know, you don't want to homeschooling is not like, oh, go outside and find a leaf
Yeah.
and look at it and learn. You know, I think there's some misconceptions and there are
Yeah.
some, you know,
Some
people that
people
maybe
there
do that,
is
but Yeah.
educational neglect and improper
Yeah.
homeschooling. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And everyone that I know, it's like, no, we have the core curriculum, like my girls. What's really cool, eventually I'll get into this, but I ended up going that direction just because I loved what I was seeing in the kids. I loved what the parents were saying. I also travel and knowing, like, my husband has a son that is a little bit older. So when we first got married, he was in traditional school and we would go and travel because I could travel. So we'd take him with us and we go to Italy and Chile and Mexico, all these different places where I'm like, he gets to learn culture, he gets to see the
Yeah.
world. I mean, he's learning history, and his school would give us such a hard time about it because we'd take him for a little while. And I understand their reasoning behind that. It makes it a little difficult to catch them up, and their money, resources don't get counted, all that. And at the same time, I'm like, this is more important for our child because he is getting real world school. And so finally, when we had our girls, I just realized, first of all, I love this idea that I will know exactly where they are in their education because I'm literally with them and seeing how they learn, seeing how they have trouble. I can modify how I teach. Like my oldest daughter, when she's struggling, if you throw it in a song, she's got it down like that. Just songs just make things make sense for her, and it's not something that they could do at school for her. A
Yeah.
teacher, one of my dearest friends is a teacher, and she's got 22 kids that she's trying to wrangle. A couple of them have some different issues that they've got going on. So half the time she's in class working with these kids, trying to just get them to sit down or not go to the bathroom, or it's kind of great, they're
Right.
kindergartners, and at the same time she's trying to teach. And so she's doing the best that she can with the tools that she has, but she's just outnumbered. And so with my girls, we literally spend 2-3 hours a day max on school, because when you're sitting down and you're super focused on one kid, you get through like that. It's so fast.
Right.
And it's amazing what they learn. And what was really cool too is when I started schooling Zaya, Eja, of course, was always hanging around because kids always want to be by you, by the big sister or big brother. They want to see, what are you doing? And she's very kinetic. This girl is moving constantly. And she's also very auditory. She learns by listening. And so literally, I'd be asking Zaya a question, and Eja would be doing a cartwheel and she'd yell out the answer because she was listening the whole time and she wanted to
Wow.
be part of it. So she was only maybe 3.5 or 4. I can't remember. I want to say she's maybe right around 4. And I just asked her, I said, do you want to start school too? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, let's order you a book. She's ready.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we got started, and now she's 5.5. She'll be 6 in November. And so here in the US, she would have just started kindergarten this year because her birthday falls too late for her to have started last year.
Mm.
And so she would just be starting kindergarten. And right now she's in second grade English. And in the next month, she'll be in second grade math. And it has
Wow.
nothing to do with she's brilliant or I'm an amazing teacher. I would love to say that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that I was just able to start her when she was ready. And we can go at our own pace. And sometimes we go faster and sometimes we go slower. And sometimes you're like, my kids are geniuses. And sometimes you're like, my kids are idiots.
Yeah, that's I have a
you
good
know?
friend, and I met her in college here, and it was like, I was intrigued because I'm like in my mid-20s and she was 16. And then I asked her, like, how are you in this class? I thought she was like some child prodigy or something. And she says,
Mhm.
I was just homeschooled. And
Yeah.
they're like, and then all like, I met her mom, and like, she's a good friend of mine now. Like, now we're both like, she's married and has a kid of her own now. But her mom said it just like you. She says, no, like, my kids aren't geniuses. We just didn't have to waste time in the school system. She said like
Mhm.
they would do like first and second grade in like 1 year, and then second
Yeah.
and third grade, and then she said at 16, and she's so smart. Like I remember back then at 16, her major was like, I think it was astronomy, and
Oh,
then
wow.
and she said, yeah, and I know I'm not going to do anything with it, but I was just like, yeah, but I'll go and take another major like after I
I got some
finish it.
time.
Yeah, she said, yeah, it was just like a hobby for her. Like, and there are three in
Wow.
each one of them. One is like an artist, and one is, and she's like really good. She's like an academic, and then her brother's an engineer in Holland. Like they're all like really amazing kids, but
Yeah.
adults now. But I just like they were the first ones who sparked that interest in homeschooling. And I've also seen kids where it went bad, but that's because they were kind of neglected. They told me they
Yeah.
didn't have a curriculum, like the
Yeah.
parents kind of let them. I forget what it's, I think it's like no schooling, not homeschooling,
Unschooling, I
unschooling.
think. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not, and I'm sure you have unschoolers that have a better experience for people. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that all unschoolers are like that, but that was their experience that they kind of regretted it. But I really feel like if you do it that like properly, the kids will benefit. And then there's this misconception that, oh, but they need school to have a social life. So can you speak to
Mhm.
that? Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so what's really cool is well and kind of a little bit back and then I'll go to the social life.
sure,
It is really neat because like I said, you can really adjust the way you teach to your kids so that they can learn better and then you can incorporate like the one thing about homeschooling is that we're always at school. Nothing is never school because we school at home. So it's not for them, they don't have this mental cutoff of, oh, I'm now not at school, I'm at home. So it's just playtime. Not to say that we don't have playtime or anything, but any moment can become a learning moment. Well, what about that? Well, I don't know. Let's look it up. Let's research it. Let's find a video. Let's watch about that. Let's go down that rabbit hole. Oh, hey, we're cooking now. It's hey, come here. I'm going to teach you how to use knives and cut an onion or something like that. So every opportunity, every moment around you is an opportunity to learn, and your kids just get used to the fact that life is about learning. It doesn't matter
yeah,
where you are or what time it is. There's no cutoff. And so for me, I hope to instill in them just a lifelong love of learning that they don't say, oh, I graduated, now I'm done. Right.
right,
And now it's just whatever. So that's something that was also really important to me. And as far as socialization, so we have we have a bunch of kids on our street. They play with them all the time. They're in jujitsu. So we take them to their jujitsu class. It's a bunch of kids. They're playing with them. And that also gets them a lot, some physical discipline as well. And kind of their gym exercise beyond playing. And so they have all of those kids. We go to church. So they have Sunday school and they're in an Awana. They go to that as well. And then in the fall and in the spring, we do a 1 day a week co-op. It's a parent-led co-op. So it's basically all moms and some dads. And we just do 3 classes on the day. And they're just random classes, whatever a parent wants to teach. Like I teach Spanish there. And so it's kind of a little sense of school, but there's only maybe 6 to 10 kids per class. And there's 2 moms or 2 parents in the class that are helping to teach it. And they just absolutely love it. So they have that kind of school experience as well. And so, and then we'll go on field trips or we'll, find what other friends are doing. So they have plenty of social interaction because, as a parent, especially growing up where I was in the network marketing world for a while, I realized networking is your social currency in this day and age. Computers are getting smarter. We have AI taking over. It's not necessarily going to be your base of knowledge that is going to get you ahead in life. It's going to
right,
be how you know how to connect with people, how you know how to network people, how you know how to access information. And so that to me is a critical part of their education. So we do make sure that they have all of these opportunities to be meeting people, to be learning. And we set the tone for it too. Like, for example, when we're at church, like I teach Sunday school with them. And so if there's ever a new kid, I always introduce them to my girls, and I've already set my girls up. Like, if there's ever someone new, you be that person that they feel comfortable to go to.
oh,
You're going to be the one that is going to be welcoming, that's going to show them around, that's going to introduce them to your friends. And so that way, they know that, hey, you're a safe space. They can go to you, and that's just going to create a connection that is more important than anything else, right? And so it teaches them to get out of their comfort zone of, oh, I'm just doing my thing, new kid, whatever. For now, they look for that. Oh, there's a new person. I need to go introduce myself. So that's part of their education as well, is that social skill. And I want them to have common sense. I want them to have street smarts. And at
right.
the same time, I can teach it to them at appropriate times too. They're not going to be learning it because someone had an older brother that told them something and now they're learning some things that they're coming home. I learned this at school and I'm like, okay,
right.
So they're not sheltered. And of course they still learn things from their friends. And at the same time, I have a little bit more of a bird's eye view of what's going on with them because they're with me most of the time.
Right.
That being said, I need to be really intentional about taking my time and making sure they have their time too.
Yeah, so how do you do that? How does that work? Well, you said it's not like you're teaching them 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
So
No.
how does that work with, like, how do you have, I know it's a funny word, balance, but what is do you have like a routine that you do? Like they have their school time, then you have your time, and how
Yeah,
does
I
that
just
work?
grab my hair and I run out of the house screaming, I gotta get away. No, I'm just kidding. No, No, it's just they have, we have school time, and then after school time, we usually do lunch. And then after that, they have either playtime or they get a couple of hours of tablet time. And that's when I work. It's like, those are my scheduled hours of business. And so they know, okay, it's mommy's work time. And for the most part, we've raised them in a way where they know they have to create their own solutions if they have a problem. If it's really bad, they'll come to me, but they know I'm going to ask them first, what solution did you come up with? And so they'll have to have something. If not, then, so that gives me my space where I can just be worked. I'm right here in the house. And if I'm filming, then I come back into my room, and they know if the door's closed, they don't come back in here. They just have their time. And so that really helps. And every now and then they'll be on my lap, and, you work with a kid on your lap, and that's just how it goes. So that's where I get my work in. And then, like I said, we have a pretty active social life between my husband and I. We make sure we take our date nights, and his parents are amazing. They live right next door to us. So once a week, they'll take the kids. So helpful. We didn't have that for a while, and then we finally kind of got that in, and that makes a big difference. And then what's really nice is, like, our friends up the street, they have daughters that are the same age. So the kids will go off and play. We hang out with each other. Or, for example, it's like, okay, my husband and her husband will go out, and then it's like, no, we need girls' time. So we'll go out and do our own thing and kind of swap parenting duties there as well. It's just really kind of, I've had to get really detailed about what my schedule is.
Right.
Because when you know what you need to do, then you can actually have more time, versus I'm kind of bouncing from thing to thing, trying to get things done. When I'm not on top of my schedule, I don't have time to do anything. But if I'm scheduled, then I have lots of time to do things. Does that make sense?
It sounds like, it's not even that like tight as it seems. Like you set like clear boundaries, you got them into a routine, and it sounds like you have a rich life. Like you have social life, and you have a like date night with your husband. So it sounds like totally capable, like it's totally possible. So for all the moms out there, I know you inspired me. So I'm happy to hear that.
Really thank you. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, my mother-in-law is always saying, you guys are always so busy. And I'm like, well, we just have things that we're doing. It's never like we feel, we don't have a moment to stop and breathe, because we also do, like, literally last night was just, we're sitting on the couch and we're just reading stories all night, and so, but that's our time, and we make it that way. And there are times when it does feel chaotic, because again, life happens and things come up unexpectedly. And then there are times where it's like, I could be using my time a lot better right now.
Yeah, that's life. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, this has been such a fun conversation. We covered so many topics.
I know.
So many real topics. Yeah. That's why I love like conversations like this, where we just start and we just go with the flow. I've learned so much more about you, and you are really inspiring. I know you're going to inspire a lot of mamas that are listening out there, between like, thriving as a mom in your 40s, and, homeschooling, and the business, like finding your identity again in your business as a mom, reinventing yourself. Can you tell the mamas out there how can they work with you?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I have the podcast Fun Rich Mom. You can find that on any podcast player or on YouTube, because if you're watching, you see I'm pretty animated. And then you can go to my website, Fun Rich Mom, as well. I'm also on Facebook, Mitch Fun Rich Mom, and then and Instagram at Mitch Fun Rich Mom as well.
All right, I'll make sure everything is linked in the show notes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mitch. This was fun.
It's been fun. Thank you. And I'm so looking forward to stealing you for my show, because I know it's going to be great. I love your energy.
Thank you. Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it. And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it.